Don't forget to subscribe and like. Together we'll tell more stories that are important to know. Women in history. So let's take a deep breath and remember how women lived 100 years ago, where their job was simply to help their husbands, where they couldn't manage their money, choose a career, or even leave the house without permission. That wasn't so long ago, but women struggled. They were limited in their education, had a hard time finding jobs, and didn't have the right to vote. In the Victorian era, women had to obey men, and in the Wild West, they had to fight to survive in harsh conditions. But women fought. Even then, there were brave women who were not afraid to challenge society. Suffragists like Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Susan Anthony fought for women's right to vote in America. Their struggle was long and hard, but they never gave up. And it was their courage that inspired women everywhere to fight for their rights. Imagine, thousands of women take to the streets, their voices louder than the noise of cars. They are not asking for flowers and gifts, but equality, bread, and peace. March 8th is not just a holiday, it's a day that turned history upside down. But how did it happen? And why do we celebrate it on March 8th? The story you've never been told. Right now, origins of International Women's Day. The history of International Women's Day began in America, 1857. New York City, factory noise, rumbling machinery, carbon monoxide fumes. Women work 16 hours a day for a pittance. They have no rights, they can't vote. And if they get fired, there's no one to protect them. But on this day, everything changes. They decided to fight. In 1908, 15,000 women took to the streets of New York City to demand shorter hours, decent wages, and the right to vote. It was brave, it was courageous, it changed history. The organizer was Maud Malone, a radical suffragette, president of the Harlem Equality League, and founder of the Progressive Women's Alliance. Many of her associates opposed organizing the march. They felt that a mass street action involving women from all walks of life would tarnish the image of suffragettes. Malone eventually resigned from the Progressive Women's Union in protest at its snobbery and racism. The police warned that the action was illegal because any assembly, except funeral processions, was prohibited on Sundays. But the women marchers worked the other days of the week, so they walked, some newspapers said strolled, down Broadway on February 16th, despite the ban. There were many male allies among them. Maud's actions differed from the marches of the British suffragettes. While the latter spoke passionately about the suffering of oppressed women and called for a fight not for life, but for death, some of them were actually tortured or killed in prison, the American women put their demands in a more friendly form. As a result, the attitude toward them was more favorable. No one was arrested at the February 16th march. Newspaper articles called the participants Amazons and their action a great moral victory. A sad confirmation of the justice of the demands with which the women protested was the fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York in March 1911. The workers were malnourished and smoked constantly to suppress their hunger. That's probably how the fire started, killing 23 men and 123 women, mostly immigrant women. Some died in the fire, others fell while trying to escape from the 9th floor. The flimsy fire escape quickly collapsed, and the front doors were locked during the work shift. A year later, on the anniversary of the Broadway March, the Socialist Party of America held mass rallies and proclaimed National Women's Day, choosing the last Sunday in February as the day of celebration. Inspired by their example, German socialist Clara Zetkin proposed an International Day of Struggle for Women's Rights in 1910. At the International Conference of Socialist Women in Copenhagen in 1910, Clara Zetkin proposed an annual International Women's Day. However, her resolution did not specify a date. Zetkin's idea was not a holiday in the modern sense, but to organize rallies and demonstrations to draw attention to women's issues, their rights, working conditions, and the right to vote. In 1907, she co-founded the International of Socialist Women. Its first Congress in Stuttgart, Germany, was attended by 58 women delegates. Its second in Copenhagen,
By the way, what
in
country are you
1910,
watching our videos
was
from?
attended by more than 100 women representatives of trade unions, socialist parties, and women's work clubs. In the midst of numerous disputes over how to bring their demands for the vote and better working conditions to the attention of the authorities, the idea arose of organizing annual mass actions, modeled on the May Day demonstrations that had already become a tradition. Thus, the International Working Women's Day was born. 1911, the first International Women's Day, was celebrated on March 19th in Germany, Austria-Hungary, Denmark, and Switzerland. That same year, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire in New York City killed more than 140 women. This became one of the symbols of the struggle for women's rights. 1913-1914, women's demonstrations took place in France, Russia, Austria, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Germany on various dates in March. The famous phrase "children, kitchen, church" came to the masses during this period. A woman could not vote, could not dispose of her property, could not have veto rights in family matters. It was a time when women everywhere were demanding change, and they got it. In 1920, American women finally won the right to vote. The struggle continued in other countries, but the first great victory was won. But that was only the beginning. In the 1960s, the feminist movement in the US won passage of the Equal Opportunity in Employment and Education Act. 1945, the UN Charter first proclaimed equality between men and women as a fundamental principle of human rights. 1975, the UN officially recognized March 8th as International Women's Day and declared it the International Year of Women. 1977, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution to celebrate March 8th as International Women's Day. How have women been treated in the past? How has the place of women in society changed? In ancient Greece, women were considered almost the property of men. For a long time, women were considered second class. In ancient Greece, they had no right to an education. During the Middle Ages in Europe, a woman could not own land or be educated. The Middle Ages are considered by many historians to be the Dark Ages, a time of great religious persecution, various diseases, and attacks between nations. But it was during this time that women gained access to most professions, as well as the right to own property. In medieval Europe, a woman could be accused of witchcraft simply because she could read. Even in the 19th century, a married woman in many countries lost all legal rights. Her property passed into the hands of her husband. But there were exceptions. The Vikings respected female warriors. In ancient Egypt, women could rule the state as Cleopatra. Hardest hit were those who dreamed of changing their fate. When Elizabeth Blackwell wanted to become a doctor in 1849, she was simply not accepted into medical schools. She didn't give up and became the first woman doctor in the United States. Women have always challenged the system. Ada Lovelace laid the foundation for computer programming in the 19th century. Marie Curie won 2 Nobel Prizes for discoveries that changed the world. Their paths were not easy, but they proved that a woman's place is wherever she chooses to be. But in every century, there have been those who have bucked the system. Stories of great women. Throughout history, there have been many women who have proven by example that women can reach any height. Let's look at examples of women who not only fought for their rights, but changed the world. Rosalind Franklin, whose DNA research was underappreciated in her lifetime. Rachel Carson, whose book Silent Spring launched the environmental movement. Simone de Beauvoir, whose work, The Second Sex, became the foundation of feminist theory. These women not only broke gender barriers, they made fundamental contributions to science, culture, and society. Their examples show that women's potential is limitless. Women have also had a significant impact on political decisions. Indira Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher, and Golda Meir are just a few of the women who have held high office and made important decisions. Their examples show that women can be successful leaders. And about women like Valentina Tereshkova, the first female cosmonaut, and many others. And these are just a few of the great women who have changed the world. Rosa Parks, the woman who wouldn't budge. On December 1st, 1955, African-American seamstress Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, to a white passenger. The driver, James, demanded that the black man give up his seat as required by law. The passenger did not insist. The three black men complied and moved to the back of the bus, but Parks remained seated. African Americans made up a large portion of the riders, and her refusal was a serious blow to the city's budget. Her arrest sparked a boycott of public transportation that lasted more than a year and led to the end of segregation on buses. It was a major victory in the civil rights movement. Amelia Earhart is the woman who took to the skies. In 1932, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, proving that flying was not just a man's job and inspiring thousands of girls to follow their dreams. Margaret Hamilton is the woman who put a man on the moon. As NASA prepared to send a man to the moon, Margaret Hamilton was in charge of the software. When Hamilton joined the mission at age 30, she was the first woman hired by NASA. Her code averted disaster during the Apollo 11 landing in 1969. It was not only a triumph for science, but also proof that women could do anything. Hamilton managed to automate the weather service, and to some extent we owe her the weather apps on our smartphones. Mary Shelley is the mother of science fiction. In 1818, 20-year-old Mary Shelley published Frankenstein, which marked the beginning of the science fiction genre. Her book became iconic, but for a long time the world did not know that the author was a woman. Mary broke the stereotype that women could not write science fiction. Malala Yousafzai is the girl who dared to speak out. In 2012, 15-year-old Pakistani activist Malala Yousafzai was severely wounded by the Taliban for her fight for girls' education. She survived, continued her activism, and in 2014 became the youngest person ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Emmeline Pankhurst was a suffragette leader. British activist Emmeline Pankhurst organised the women's rights movement in Britain. The suffragettes staged hunger strikes, protests, and attracted public attention. Their struggle resulted in women in Britain gaining the right to vote in 1918. Van T. Kim Phuc is a girl who changed the way people thought about the war. The famous photograph of a Vietnamese girl running from a napalm attack shocked the world in 1972. This girl, Kim Phuc, became a symbol of the struggle against war. She survived terrible burns, but dedicated her life to humanitarian work and helping victims of military conflict. How March 8 is celebrated in different countries. In the United States, International Women's Day is not an official holiday, but marches and conferences on women's rights are held on this day. In these countries, 8 March is not celebrated in the traditional sense. Instead, they celebrate Women's History Month. In the United Kingdom, for example, the celebration is quite widespread. Public institutions, schools, universities, and cultural centres hold various events, which are covered by major media. In Australia, History Month was first celebrated at the beginning of this century. Since then, community organisations have promoted women's achievements each year through the media and cultural centres. Each year, a new theme is chosen to focus the events. For example, the 2012 theme was Women Architects and Urban Planners. Women's History Month is nationally recognised in the United States. It originated as Women's History Week in the early 1980s, and later community organisations pushed for March to be recognised as Women's History Month. In the US, as in Australia, a theme is chosen each year around which conferences and theme meetings are held. The first theme was the courage and compassion of American women of that generation. The celebrations of History Month in the United Kingdom, the United States, and Australia are educational in nature and are primarily intended to promote the merits of female historical figures and to draw attention to certain social problems. March 8th is not a public holiday in Italy, but it is widely celebrated. Since 1946, the country has chosen the yellow mimosa as its symbol. Italian men give this spring flower to show their appreciation and congratulate the fairer sex, while girls give each other yellow mimosas as a sign of unity. Some prefer to gather in all-female groups to celebrate in a restaurant, cafe, or at home around a beautifully set table. But the custom is not nationwide. There are peaceful demonstrations and marches organized by community organizations and trade unions in various cities throughout the Italian Republic. In Italy, such communities are well respected, so such events attract a lot of public attention. Despite the fact that this day is not a day off in Italy, the government offers other benefits, such as free admission to museums for girls. In Russia, March 8th is International Women's Day, a holiday that is celebrated with great fanfare. On this day, men express their love and respect for women by giving them flowers and gifts and organizing festive events. Here are some of the traditions for celebrating March 8th in Russia. Flowers. Flowers are an essential feature of the holiday. The most popular flowers are tulips, mimosa, and roses. Men give flowers to their mothers, wives, daughters, colleagues, and girlfriends. Gifts. In addition to flowers, men give women various gifts such as candy, cosmetics, jewelry, and appliances. Celebrations. Many organizations hold holiday concerts and parties on this day. Families also gather to celebrate the holiday. Day off. March 8th is an official day off in Russia, allowing people to spend more time with loved ones. In China, March 8th has been celebrated since 1949, and the traditions of the celebration are very similar to the Russian ones. Girls are given gifts, it is not necessary to go to work on this day, and many retailers announce discounts on goods for girls. It is customary in China to spend the holiday with the family, cook a delicious dinner, and attend various events. The men of the family try to take care of the household chores. The Chinese government lends its full support to the celebration. Many parks and theaters hold specially prepared performances. People's celebrations can be seen on the streets. Large award ceremonies for the fairer sex are organized. There is also a unique family custom, the preparation of the gift of the gourd of faithfulness. It is prepared by men, and it is a hollow pumpkin in which figures and various foods are placed. Sweet grapes, spicy pork, slices of watermelon, fried tomatoes. On the 7th, a similar event is held, but for the younger members of the fair sex, Girls' Day, or the Feast of Young Beauties. Girls are given small cakes and flowers beautifully decorated with ribbons. In Nepal, the holiday is legally recognized, and Nepalese women are given a day off. Peaceful actions for political rights and emancipation, including marches, are also often timed to coincide with this event. There are usually no official celebrations, as Tej, the women's festival or celebration of family happiness, is more common in Nepal. During Tej, Nepali women dress in red saris and have dinners with songs and dances. Tej has a religious basis, consisting of prayers to the goddess Parvati. Marriage to this goddess is considered sacred and ideal, so Nepalese women ask her for prosperity in their relationships and health for their husbands. Japan. In the land of the rising sun, March 8th is not celebrated, but on March 3rd, two major celebrations similar in theme to Women's Solidarity Day are held simultaneously: Peach Blossom and Hinamatsuri. In families where there are female children, special stepped ladders with Hina Ningyo dolls are set up. The stairs should be covered with peach petals and a red cloth as a symbol of purification. The room where the Hina Ningyo are placed is decorated with cherry and tangerine petals. This ritual is so popular that entire doll bazaars are organized to sell special decorations. Hinamatsuri is considered the holiday of little and young girls. They dress in bright kimonos embroidered with flowers. On March 3rd, it is customary in Japan to visit relatives, have family dinners, and give sweet surprises: rice cakes, mochi, and hina arare. Hinamatsuri serves to educate the younger generation. It is important for girls to demonstrate good manners. Germany. For a long time, March 8th was not celebrated in Germany. In the last decade, the situation began to change. For example, some employers began to give gifts to female employees and introduce a reduced working day. Some organizations organize peaceful marches for political rights and various thematic meetings. In Latin America, there are feminist marches for women's rights. In Spain, women organised mass strikes to demand equal rights. On this day, in every city, in libraries, universities, theatres, museums, schools, there are debates, exhibitions, conferences, discussions, etc. about the history and life of women, the struggle of women for their rights. The finale. What this day means today, March 8th, is not just a holiday. It is a reminder of the struggles, of the victories, of what is yet to come. Today, women run major corporations, make groundbreaking scientific discoveries, and govern nations. But full equality is still a long way off. So today, we congratulate women, not just with flowers, but with respect, equal opportunity, and a voice that is heard. Already liked this video? Don't forget to subscribe and like us. See you soon.